All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the ORCID Community Hub's webinar. We have a great panel today from a variety of countries, and they're going to share their experience. I am going to briefly talk a bit about why we're doing this or why this is important, and then I'll introduce some of the panelists. My colleague Lombe Tembo and I, on behalf of ORCID, are very happy that you're here. Let me just start by saying that ORCID is in itself a hub. So when organizations are keen to adopt ORCID, one of the first things we ask is what type of system are you going to use to connect to ORCID? Are you going to use a vendor system or a CRIS system or a repository? And because we work with publishers, funders, universities, there are many, many answers to that question. But these community hubs are a unique solution to that problem. So we're going to hear from three countries and consortia lead organizations who have decided to kind of chart a unique path with an open source community hub, and they're graciously here to share their experience. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Tiffany. Tiffany, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thank you, Brian. So I am Tiffany, and I'm the ORCID lead at the Royal Society Te Aparangi in Wellington, New Zealand. So the New Zealand ORCID Consortium is managed by the Royal Society Te Aparangi. And the Royal Society is an independent, non-profit organization that promotes, supports, and advances science, technology, and humanities in New Zealand. So we do this through various tasks, such as research funding, expert advice, publishing, public engagement. So in order to support New Zealand with the adoption of ORCID, Royal Society Te Aparangi launched the New Zealand ORCID Consortium in 2016. The consortium is fully funded by the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, MBIE, to provide this excellent resource for the researchers in New Zealand. So the consortium is there to mainly provide technical support for any consortium members to help them with new ORCID integrations, to help them write to ORCID records, and to manage the New Zealand ORCID Hub. So this map here shows all our current member organizations. We have 40 members, out of which 25 members have an integration with the New Zealand ORCID Hub. We are very proud to have a very well-represented science research system with members from universities, public research organizations. We have government departments, independent and smaller organizations, institutes of technologies and polytechnics. So different organizations have different needs, and the New Zealand Consortium, we are here to help the members utilize their ORCID membership as best as we can.
Okay, so hello everyone. I am Wesley Barry, and I am the ORCID Consortium tech person and support person for the South African ORCID Consortium. The South African ORCID Consortium is managed by Tenor South Africa, as you see over there. Tenor South Africa is the National Research and Education Network. For South Africa, we provide internet and network resources and services to the public universities and the research councils in South Africa. And one of the services that we offer them is the consortium, the South African Consortium for South Africa. Consortium was established in 2017, so one of the early adapters of ORCID consortiums. and we provide administrative and tech support for the SA ORCID Consortium. I just want to mention, sorry, before we carry on, that we all three are going to be talking about the ORCID Hub. The underlying code behind the hub is all the same. So what Tiffany talks about will apply to my consortium as well as Derek's consortium. And so yes, so that's just a quick catch up on that. Over to Derek.
Thank you, Weasley. My name is Derek ISJ. I work with the Research and Education Network for Uganda as a software developer. I'm also here to talk about the ORCID Consortium. So the ORCID Consortium of Uganda was established last year in 2025, and it was established to amplify research visibility and collaboration. We have so far onboarded 12 members, and the subject of this matter about the ORCID Hub that we have 11 members so far using the hub, which is pretty easy. Yeah.
So, what is the New Zealand ORCID Hub? The New Zealand ORCID Hub is a free tool that allows all the consortium members to productively engage with ORCID, regardless of their technical resources. It was developed by a team at the University of Auckland and members of the Royal Society Te Apirangi. And it is tough for smaller organizations to develop their own systems. So the hub was designed to allow easy integration, no matter what size or the level of technical resourcing the institutions have. It also saves researchers time as they don't have to update their ORCID records themselves. It is recognized as an ORCID certified service provider, which allows trustworthy integration. And it also allows a login using your ORCID credentials or a federated identity service.
Okay, so as I mentioned, all the hubs are the same in the back end. We looked at the New Zealand ORCID Hub, and we figured that it might be something useful for us. And so I want to go into the why we thought about using the hub. Just some background in East Africa at that time, in 2015, we had a fees must fall protest. And that meant that a lot of universities were either closed for a long time, or a lot of staff left over there. At the same time, around about 2020, obviously we all know about the COVID-19 pandemic that happened. And those two events collided in some things where it allowed that the IT people were under-resourced at the time. And also universities were trying to get back into the swing of things. It meant that things like building integrations weren't like a key component for IT at the time. And so libraries were struggling to communicate with IT, for example, to get things like ORCID and ORCID integrations working. And so we thought that something like the hub could work for our community. And so we started investigating options that were out there. Next slide. So in addition to that, there was also some other things that were key factors that were taking place. Our National Research Funding Agency quite early decided that they are going to mandate that all researchers applied for funding needed an ORCID ID. And so that also put pressure on university libraries to help their researchers create ORCID records. Then some of our journal systems in South Africa required that authors need to make sure that at least affiliations and qualifications were made public in the ORCID records. And again, that meant that there was pressure for the universities to make sure that they provided some ORCID system to help them with that. And then on the far right, and more recently, there's been a need to help these research organizations prove that the systems that they use and that the research that's taken place is all accurate and correct. And so affiliation attribution is important over here, as well as service attributions as well, for funding. And so that's why the funding is over there. Next slide, please. And so that was the why. The how required a lot of conversation. As I mentioned, we noticed that the SE community was struggling to build integrations. While we were trying to investigate something like that, we noticed that the Royal Society were doing that, just launched theirs probably like a year before that. And we attended some of the conversations they had, some demos that they did. And then once we decided on this, we sort of tried to unpack with the ORCID Hub Dev team from New Zealand to figure out a way that we could take what they were doing and make it more global. And so we did some interactions with them, and we also provided the code that we needed to make that part global and push that back to the New Zealand ORCID GitHub. And so there's always been this concept of us working together as a community, so that if somebody does something productive in one hub, it should be pushed back in globally into the rest of the other hubs. So it's a good community tool. Yes. Next slide. So over to Derek.
The Ugandan ORCID Hub, the how and the why, is that earlier last year, during our onboarding, we attended a presentation from Weasley, credit to him, on the ORCID Hub. And we noticed that the hub has more features, the adding affiliations, and we thought it's pretty easy. And also from the software development background, you shouldn't reinvent the wheel. So if there's a tool that is already doing what you want to do, it is better to use that tool. And the beautiful thing about this hub is that it is open source. So it was just pulling the code and then doing a few tweaks here and there, and then you have the hub up and running. So we engaged the team, South African team, for the support and during the setup. Yeah. Next slide.
All right. I will talk a little bit about what sort of items can be written using the hub to a stakeholder's ORCID record, and also the how. So we have here, this is a little snapshot of how one of the pages in the ORCID hub. So you can write affiliations, funding, different work types, peer reviews, a variety of different researcher properties. And under affiliations, you also have employment, education, distinction, membership, service, qualification, invited position. And in the hub, once you navigate through to works, you can see a drop-down menu where you can select the work types that you would like to write. ORCID has more than 50 different work types available, so we wanted all of them to be available in the New Zealand ORCID hub, so they're all there. And early last year, you must recall that ORCID released a new set of work types to support a variety of research outputs for humanities and arts and social sciences contributions. So this is incredible. This is something we value a lot here in New Zealand as well. So we wanted to make sure those work types would be available for the community to write. So we updated the ORCID hub to make sure that those 13 new work types were also available to use. So that's all the items that you can write, and now how can you write them using the hub? So there's mainly 4 different ways you can do it. The first one is user invitation. So this method is when you invite one individual at a time. It is usually useful for small organizations. The second one is using a federated identity service. So in New Zealand, our federated identity service is called Tuakiri. So if a user logs into the hub using their institutional login or the Tuakiri details, then it will automatically write a standard affiliation onto their ORCID record, which is a very easy way of getting an authoritative affiliation written. Thirdly, we have using the New Zealand ORCID Hub's API. So the New Zealand ORCID Hub has an API, and you can use it to allow automation of everything that the hub admins can do. So larger organizations with a more IT capacity can use that feature. And then lastly, and the most commonly used method is uploading using JSON or CSV files. So this method is for batch processing of large number of stakeholders' information with their permission. Over to you, Darren.
Okay, so here we'll look at the Ugandan ORCID Hub. So the interface is pretty the same as my colleagues. And then it also has the 2 login options where one logs in using RIF, which is the Reno Identity Federation. So member institutions that are already on the Reno network can be able to log in using their home credentials, and then also using the ORCID. Next slide. So digging into single sign-on, that is the Reno Identity Federation that I've talked about earlier. So you can see on the left side, the researcher is able to look for their institution that they are coming from. And upon searching, so on the right side, the researcher is able to log in using their home credentials. So these credentials can be the username, institution email, and then the password that is for the institution. Next.
You're on, Derek.
So Tiffany earlier talked about the bulk batch processing. So this is just a snapshot of that example. So under the tasks, user can be able to, the institution admin can be able to upload hundreds and hundreds of researchers. So we have found this feature largely used for our institutions. Because all you need is that you need a template or a CSV with the affiliation type, then the first name, last name, and then the email. All the other fields can be optional. And then with all those details, the user can be able to upload. Next slide. So it gives you, after the batch, after you try to upload, it gives you a preview of the different members or the different researchers that you have in your CSV file. So you can edit accordingly, and then after that you can be able to activate all this. So on activation, users be able to receive emails on their end to authorize the hub to do activities on their behalf. So the hub is able to become a trusted organization. Yeah. Next slide, I think. Over to you.
Okay, so the South African ORCID Consortium version of the hub. So we've named ours Interbreco, and a lot of people always ask where that name comes from. So it's from one of our 11 official languages of Africa Chikosa. The word translates into English. It means trust, and it symbolizes intention of what the hub does to act as a trusted source of information into ORCID records. Um, like like the other hubs, it is a certified service provider, so it goes through its checks every year to make sure that it's up to the standards of what ORCID requires. And that also means that anybody using the hub doesn't have to do a verification to get any production credentials. Next slide. So Tiffany and Derek spoke a lot about the interaction between the ORCID hub with the ORCID registry. And so that obviously uses the standard ORCID API. And so that interaction happens very, very nicely like that. There is some other interactions that happen also with the hub ORCID API, but I'll go through that in a second. But the screen that you see over there is the sort of the menu that only a consortium hub person will see. But I wanted to show this so that we can see how easy it is to onboard an organization into the hub. In front of you, you'll see it says there's a little form that says onboard organization. And so we fill in an organization name and you fill in the organization contact. And then you send a invitation. That person on the other side will get an email and they will click on a link and that will activate the organization. In that menu over there, you also see on the far left, there are some other things that we as hub admins can do. So we can look at the active organizations. We can do an organization setup, which is this format you see over here. We get to see the ORCID tokens that has been given in the system. And then there's things like message queues, scheduled tasks, and other things that we can look at to see if anything has been stuck or how those are flowing. And then again, like I mentioned, the ORCID Hub API. Next slide. This is what a organization form will look like in the hub. Each organization that uses the ORCID hub will have its own sort of profile. And so there's no crosstalk between one organization or other organization. What you see over there is a simple form in terms of it has the name of the organization. But usefully in there, there is an option to put in the client ID, the ORCID client ID, client and secret. So just shows that the librarian or the person using the hub doesn't have to do any other customizations. They just have to apply for ORCID credentials and apply it to this form over here. And then you can also put in your organization identifiers in there. So in this case, it's a row identifier. And then there's examples of the tech contact and the webhooks that you can enable, as well as the email template for the ORCID hub. Okay, next slide. So yeah, so as I mentioned in 2 slides ago, that Tiffany and Derek were speaking about the interaction between the hub and the ORCID registry. On the other side of this, there is another option that you can use, and Tiffany did mention a bit about this in a slide. But this is the ORCID Hub API, which is different to ORCID's API. The ORCID Hub API does allow you to integrate a third-party system that can talk to the ORCID Hub, that can talk to the registry. The ORCID Hub API gives you the ability to interact with the records that are already connected to the ORCID Hub. There are 1 or 2 examples of that. I know in New Zealand they are using some of those examples. Definitely, I still yet to experience how this actually works in practice, but the option is there available to use that. Next slide.
All right. So now I would like to give some examples from the New Zealand consortium on how we write ORCID records. So I'll just focus on these two methods, one, the federated identity service and the batch upload. So I'll just give some examples of those two. The first method is using Tuakiri, which is the New Zealand Federated Identity Service. So this page here, it's a screenshot from one of the web pages from the University of Auckland. And it's got an option or a link that's very clear to create and connect to your ORCID record. So if a researcher clicks on that, it will take them to the login page of the ORCID Hub. Once they log in or click on the login button, then they have the two options of either using their login via Tuakiri or login via ORCID. And by choosing Tuakiri, they get to decide or choose the organization they are from. And that in turn will give them a standard affiliation that is written onto their ORCID record with the green tick trust marker. So it's a very easy way of getting authenticated affiliation available. And a few other examples using the fourth method, the batch processing with JSON and CSV file upload. So this example here is for funding items, and the New Zealand ORCID Consortium is very proud of funding items because the Royal Society Te Aparangi administers funds on behalf of the government, and the Ministry of Business Innovation and Employment, they distribute majority of the funding. So together we write a lot of the funding items onto researchers' records, which we're really proud of. Here, there's a few examples for services and distinctions. So again, the Royal Society of New Zealand runs processes for the Marsden Fund, for example. So here you have a panelist. So we like to recognize these processes or contributions, and so we write those as services to ORCID records. We also award medals, so those are written as distinctions to ORCID records. And another example is the Royal Society is responsible for the Prime Minister's Science Prizes. So we also write those as a distinction onto researchers' ORCID record. And lastly, just one last example of how an affiliation would look like from the New Zealand ORCID Hub. Thank you. Over to Derek. Derek?
I think we lost his audio. If you want to get slides, you can go to my slides and you can take it from there. Okay. So, I mean, in the previous slide, Derek had just an example of what Uganda was doing. So maybe we can just look at that slide again, Tiffany. Sorry, maybe I'll highlight that. Yes. So in Derek's example, here's one of the universities over here. And you'll see over there, there's a row identifier that's included also in there, and the source of Uganda ORCID Hub. So that's just an example again of what Uganda is doing. So next slide. Okay, so from South African point of view, There are some snippets of what our universities are doing. The first one here is from the University of Pretoria, and they were one of the first adopters of the ORCID Hub in South Africa. And there's a little article that we wrote about him that was as early as 2023. But what they did was they built a research visibility tool that allowed the researchers or the librarians to help researchers create the full ORCID record and to populate the record with information. And so the ORCID Hub was a key factor in that, and so it helped quite a lot with the research visibility tool. In addition to that, the library consulted with two of the faculties, and they wanted to do a pilot in terms of creating a full record of the research to make sure that those information is captured correctly, so that those researchers can apply for funding and the like. And so that's a good example of how that university is using it. There's an example on the top right there from the Northwest University, and they have made some good documentation on how the researchers can connect to the ORCID Hub. And interesting over here is that one of the people that were a key component of the University of Pretoria in getting the ORCID integration work moved over to that university. And so she took the knowledge and skill that she used over there into Northwest also. And so we're glad that Northwest is also using the ORCID Hub. And then below there is an example of some guides from the University of the Free State. They're interesting because they also work closely with the library and the research office. And they built the ORCID Hub around that. And so the library is using it quite intensively with their researchers as well. And so that's just some guides to that. If you go to the next slide. There's an example over here that I've included of, this is one person's ORCID record. I've only taken one snippet of that, or some snippets of it. There's quite a bit more in that. And so you'll see that the ORCID record has got a lot of bits out of that over the years. So in this case, there's 7 bits of the ORCID record that is written to. But this is an example of how the ORCID Hub has been used to write into every component of the ORCID record. Next slide. Okay, so I don't know if this is the last page. I don't know if Derek is available here. If Derek wants to say anything else, otherwise I will wrap it up.
That's pretty much.
Derek, we lost you earlier on, so we just moved on.
Oh, yeah, it's okay. It's okay. I had disturbance in my network. I just missed a bit about the rural university affiliation on the ORCID Hub, using the ORCID Hub.
Okay. Okay, no, perfectly. I've explained that to the community.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, cool. So this is the last slide. This is the question slide. So I just want to, from all three of us, maybe to say thank you to the community here and to ORCID for allowing us to chat to you. We can probably talk about this for all day. There's many components to this, and we are quite passionate about this. So our details are there on the slide over there. So you please feel welcome to email us if you have any questions. Brian, we noticed that there is something covered in the banners here on the slides. So we'll probably share the slides with you also that you can share with the community, if that helps.
Yes, absolutely. We can share the slides.
Okay.
I wonder if maybe some of our Zoom heads are covering some of the slides. Perhaps.
I think there's a participant participant list or something. It might be something on Tiffany's laptop. Maybe that's taking up the resources. I don't know. Yeah. Sorry, Tiff.
Sorry, Tiffany. It's the perils of you being the screen sharer.
Yes.
You notice how I did that too, yeah?
Should I stop sharing? Or
so can you see the question though?
I have a question here. There's one here in the Q&A.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, if it's all right, I'll share with you, the panel.
Okay.
The question is, do any one of you have rules on how to make sure the organizations or users are real users and organizations and not, for example, fake organizations, to keep your ORCID connections trustworthy?
I can answer if
Sure,
you don't
go
know.
for it, Wes. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so in the hub there are some key checks that we can do. The one is that we have a sandbox environment that allows people to play around with. We actually have to have that communication with the organization, so we can't have. It stops us from having fake organizations in there because those organizations have to communicate with us firstly, to have interaction to join the hub. And when it comes into production, we do another check to make sure that that organization knows how to use the hub and stuff like that, before they go into production. And at that point, also, there's a key component to making sure that that organization is real. Secondly, there is us applying again with ORCID I've had interaction with ORCID for credentials. ORCID also has a step where if you apply for API member, API credential has to go to that organization. So that's another check. And lastly, having something like a single sign-on option allows that organization to sign in with the exact details. And so that's from an organization point of view. From a user's point of view, again, single sign-on helps with that because a fake user can't log in with a real user's credentials. And so only users that belong to that organization can log into that profile. And in the same way, then you have to then allow your connection into the ORCID record. So I don't know if that makes sense. Also, if that person maybe is concerned about that, maybe we can speak about that offline. If they have any other questions, yeah. Cool.
Great.
Maybe
Thanks
to
for that,
speak to
Wes.
that.
Sure,
Oh, yes,
go
yes.
for it, Derek. Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead, Derek.
easily. I presented about the so usually on the invitation you have to include that API credentials, that is the client secret and the client ID, so that somehow authenticates the organization from the ORCID side. And also now from the users level, pretty much Wizard has handled that as well, using single sign-on. And usually the organizations are the ones that invite the users. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Derek. Excellent point. We have a question. Some external systems, like institutional repositories, can write records directly to ORCID profiles. Can you explain the value added of the ORCID hub? And that's from our colleague Owen.
I can.
Sure.
Tiff, you want to add?
Go for it, Leslie.
No.
I have an answer, so I'm sorry. Yeah. So it's a good question because we do get the question a lot. So yes, external systems like institutional parties can write records. From our case, when we introduced the ORCID hub, and I'm sure the same with Tiffany and with Derek, the hub was there to fill in a gap that couldn't be answered. So yes, institutional repositories can do that. Not all organizations have institutional repositories that can write to the ORCID record, firstly. And secondly, there is not a lot of integrations out there that can write affiliation, which is quite important. A lot of those institutional repositories and systems focus mostly on writing works to the ORCID record. So affiliation is a gap, and so things like the hub and maybe ORCID's affiliation manager fills those gaps to do those things. And so that's where the value-added service comes in, is to fill in the gap for the things that the other systems can't do. In a real world, the hub won't exist, because in a real world there will be systems that could write these things naturally to ORCID, to the ORCID record. And so if that's the case, the hub will probably fall away eventually. Because it's better for universities to have maybe one integration that can write things fully to the ORCID record, whereas having two or three of those systems. But for now, the hub fills that gap to cater for that, yes.
Great, thanks for that, Wesley. A very specific question to you, Derek and Renu. What specific challenges did the Ugandan hub face regarding internet penetration, researcher training, and institutional buy-in?
Some of the challenges that we faced is so we had to do training and outreach to the different institutions. Yeah, so that last year we did a round of different campaigns to the different research institutions to be able to onboard them onto ORCID, and also training on the ORCID hub. So some of the challenges we had is that these sessions were really not so long. It would be like 2 days, 3 days. And if you had to look at the hub, you find it has a lot of features and would not exhaust all the features during those trainings. How we are going about that as of now is that we are having refresher courses about how to use the hub, and also funding. So there was funding that came in from ORCID that was able to facilitate all these trainings. Yeah, so it kind of helped a lot because we were able to move onto the ground where these institutions are and train the institutions and even the researchers themselves. So right now we are kind of doing online, and it's a bit tricky, but going forward we shall find a middle ground. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, I see. So the in-person aspect helped a lot then, is that right?
Yeah, sure.
I see. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. I have one here for anyone in the panel, or maybe all of you, if you like. Here's a question. Can you share a success story where a hub integration significantly improved an institution's global research visibility or discoverability? Tiffany
I
looks
can
like
go
she wants to
first with
take that
that
one.
one. I don't have one example per se right now, but there's one that I'm hoping will happen. We've got few smaller organizations that don't have a lot of visibility at the moment, and they're hoping to use the ORCID hub to write to researchers' ORCID record, because the ORCID hub is their only way of being able to write authoritative data to ORCID records. So they're hoping to be able to write a lot more of their activities and research outputs in order to increase the visibility. So it hasn't happened yet, but we're very hopeful that it will happen and that will increase the visibility. There's ambition there.
Very good. Derek, Wesley, you have any examples?
So I think the example I used earlier on of the that research from the University of Pretoria, they've done some collaboration with outside organizations, and they've seen actually the value of the hub, and they were actually surprised. So they had a lot of questions from other communities outside of South Africa because they've seen that this researcher they collaborated with or at least the hub interacted with their record. So it looks like there is some interactions there. I don't know specific examples of how this is actually interacted globally, but I will say that affiliation has made a big difference in that. The affiliation in a lot of those ORCID records for those researchers has actually helped with them applying for funding and other stuff globally. So that did make a difference, yes.
Excellent.
So
Thanks.
for the Ugandan consortium, since this is the new kid on the block, since it was established last year, I can't say we have seen that big of an impact, but going forward, I think it is something that will be feasible using the hub.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Derek. But you're the new kid on the block, but you get points for speed and swiftness because you formed very quickly and immediately had credentials. It was pretty impressive last October. So well done in
Sure.
that regard.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Definitely, yes.
All right. We have one more that's come through the Q&A. How do you ensure the consistency of existing ORCIDs and support and retaining researchers' ORCID IDs as they move between institutions? Our challenge is that when researchers often register new ORCIDs when they change institutions, mainly because they have forgotten that they had one that previously used and leads to multiple ORCIDs per researcher, causing them to lose track and complicating the management of their academic record. Is that something you all have encountered much?
Not the hub specifically, but
Yeah.
that is a general awkward question I think that we
Yeah.
all grapple with.
Right.
Yeah, so a lot of that comes down to actually maybe some education for the researcher. Trying to explain at a grassroots level that this is the ORCID record, make sure that you know what it is. Have things like a backup account maybe that you can get into that is not your university login details, so that you can recover from it. Understand also, or let the researcher understand that the organization doesn't own the ORCID record, they own the ORCID record. And so that they should have the ability to move across that. And then I would say things like if your institution has single sign-on, when you move to that new organization, make sure that you connect your ORCID record to that. So small things like that requires education. It's a difficult thing to do because some researchers just log into the ORCID record now because they require funding. And then 5 years later, they need to log into the ORCID record again because the organization that they're at now requires them to have an ORCID record or need to do something to the ORCID record. So that is difficult. So I'll say most of that is down to education to the researcher. Yes. I don't know, Brian, I don't think that is maybe something that ORCID also battles with generally.
Yes, we're familiar with this issue, and I do agree. Educating the researcher is probably the main aspect. When, for example, Wesley, when we write to you from support@orcid.org, our email signature automatic. If you notice at the end, it will say my name or Lombe's name.
Yes.
And then it will say, remember to add multiple emails to your ORCID record.
Yes.
This is because we know that researchers move around a lot. So having a Gmail or a personal email attached to your ORCID allows you to access that because you change jobs. You have many things to think of. I'm sure, updating your ORCID record is not top of mind.
Yes.
And, if that does happen, we do have a process for linking ORCID records that may have been created with different emails. So please, feel free to refer your researchers to contact us.
Yeah.
So
Can I add to that?
Sure.
So since we did the campaigns last year, so we did these campaigns on different institutions. So we found a lot about that challenges that most researchers have different ORCID records, and they have like different emails. So one of the gaps that we had to cover during this sensitization is that we are able to merge these records. So ORCID has that capability of creating or merging the record into one. So I think going back to what Wesley and uh, the team has said is that so we need to have like a bit of sensitization to the different researchers because this is a problem on their end usually, and the ORCID Hub might not be able to handle the user issues on their end. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, indeed. But if in doubt, you're also welcome to contact ORCID support, and we can verify that if the ORCID is attached to an email, and we do have a process for that. And as Derek says, linking multiple ORCIDs to the preferred one for the researcher. There may be one that has a lot of information that they want to keep, and that so we do have a way of working with the researcher individually to do that.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I see Vio has added to that, Brian.
Okay. Main issue is that ORCID does not include a mechanism to prevent. Well, that's true. We don't we use email addresses to verify that. So, but we don't have access to national IDs or passports, and I don't think we would want that, to be honest, that capability. But yeah, we do do our best to in the case of a multiple ORCIDs to point to the preferred one once we can verify the researcher's identity. So.
Brian, maybe just to say that if we are in South Africa, I'm happy to have a chat with her.
Oh, yeah. Thank you,
yeah.
Wes. Yeah.
Yes. Offline, so
yeah,
she can just email to ORCID@10 so that we can take it from there.
Very good.
Cool.
Okay. Yes. So the question comes from University of Free State.
Cool. Yes, I'll have a chat with her. Definitely.
Yeah. Great.
Perfect.
Anything on anyone else's mind? Any last thoughts? It's been a good session.
Guess maybe just to say that like this has over the years there has been a community effort from all of us, both from ORCID and from the ORCID consortiums as we go here. So we are like a family in that sense. So we're all passionate about the hub. So if there are any other consortia that are thinking about it, or maybe other organizations, just please do feel free to have a chat with us, and we can see if we can maybe encourage you guys to join. Yes. So that's my round of.
That's very, very, very gracious, Leslie. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
I second
I
that.
just have. Oh, you second that, do you?
Yeah.
Very good. I just have one thing to add. Maybe I think it was possibly alluded to, but I do want to make it quite specifically clear that so I've never been a hub user, on the say a university in the three countries, but I'm familiar with how it works with ORCID, and I do also know that if you're familiar with the ORCID tool, the affiliation manager, which is available to consortium members, essentially we did the same thing. We kind of picked parts of the hub that were quite handy and useful for people with not much tech experience to be able to have them upload a CSV, connect with ORCID in that way. And so just want to give a bit of praise to the folks that did, develop, and you guys, Wesley and Derek, that continue to develop and have, made the hub a bit more international and adaptable. So so we have done that as well at ORCID, and there's quite a lot of countries that have taken that and run with it and use it heavily.
Yes.
Ukraine is a huge user of the affiliation manager, and numbers of others as well. So
Definitely. Cool. Awesome.
Okay, I think from my end, I'm really, as Renu, we are happy to be part of this community, and there's a lot of potential, I think, for our researchers and all the other organizations on board. So we are really happy to be part of the community.
excellent, Derek. All right. Well, thank you, panelists, very much. It was really lovely. And as Lumbe mentioned, we will be sharing slides and a recording. And thanks very much. All right. Have a good day,
Thank you
everyone.
very much.
Bye now.
Thank you.